Yeah, it's cash. Get him. DJ Deuce McGuire, this hot as a log fire. Spark the lighter in the 303. We wrestle at the quarry. Golden, Colorado. Mercury Pro Wrestling Academy. Elevated wrestling. Yeah. Hashtag follow if you know the motto. Can't stop now. Got the need for speed. Combustion and concussion. Championships in my vision. I put the key in the ignition. Such an easy decision. I got a hustler's ambition. Wrestling at its best. Welcome to the show I put on for Rocky Mountain Pro. Let's go.
Welcome back to RMP Radio. RMP Radio is on the air. Hi, I am your host, Mr. Fourth Row, and I am joined once again by Zamore. Zamore, how you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great. So, hey, this is kind of a perfect, funny, interesting time with the current state of affairs to have you on to talk about a few things. Like we do here on RMP Radio, just kind of talk a little bit more beyond just the wrestling ring, but some things that have come up that I'd like to talk to you about. And you posted out there on social media, interesting, we're going to talk a little conspiracy theory kind of stuff. And one of your interesting things that we'll start off with is you mentioned out there with the stock markets and stuff, like something called a bull trap. What is that for the people that may not know?
Yeah, so a bull trap is just a false signal. It's a declining trend. So you see, like, if you look at the stock, you look at the the chart of buy and sell. You'll notice that there's a trend, a downward trend, and it's called a bull trap because traders and investors that bought in because they thought there was a buy signal, because they thought, the stock's dropping. Now's the time to buy, then it's gonna shoot up. So they call it a trap because it traps them. It gets them to buy in, and then once they kind of invest in or buy in, then the signal will generate like a tremendous loss, like what they call a dump. And a lot of people that aren't wise to the trading or to those kind of signals will fall trap to it and lose money, and the bulls will acquire that money.
I see. Yeah. So like maybe the lay people know that they hear the terms bear market, bull market, and a bear is when you want to sell, and a bull is when you want to purchase. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so that's why that term, the bull trap, kind of is put out there. That, like you said, a false sense of what could actually be happening. Correct.
So it's this false sense. It makes it look like, oh my God, the stock's pumping, it's going up. We got to buy in, and then you got your, they call FOMO, fear of missing out. People start buying in, and then once it reaches that high point, then it begins to dump, begins to drop, and anyone that bought there at the top got basically trapped, got fooled.
I see.
And so I put that chart out expressing that, saying I noticed there's a bull trap that's developing here. Now, either when we reach the end of the descending triangle, which is just another indicator that you can make, there's only one or two ways it can go. It could either dump or it can shoot up. You cross-reference that information with other things like volume and just basically how much movement is going on, and I was able to tell that, hey, right now it's going to reach the end of this descending triangle and it's going to dump because there's not enough volume to support it. There's not enough action going on to support that. There's going to be that it's going to go upward, or as they call, go to the moon. Mm-hmm. So I predicted that I was going to drop, and it did. The very next day, it dumped.
Oh, yeah! Wow.
And so those are just right now it's pretty predictable signals because considering like the now $4 trillion that are pumped into the economy, people are that are in the market, or that trade stocks, that trade any type of assets, realize that our dollar is going to be worth less after this, because the more money you pump into the circulation, the more it devalues the dollar.
Right.
So people are, if you look at, for example, the stock of gold right now, it's shooting up. because everyone's trying to put their money into that. They're trying to put their money into assets that they could not have to worry about losing value on. But long term, though, I don't believe gold is a very is going to be something that could be used, especially on global transactions. So the only other option that we have is digital currencies. And so not to say that like there's not flaws with them right now, but digital currencies are just a value of storage. It's not necessarily like a value of like currency, but it could be traded as such. But I believe that this pumping all this money into the economy, along with the pandemic that's caused millions of people to lose their jobs, an unprecedented amount of unemployment claims filed within this last month, more than ever in history by times 10. All that I feel is gonna reach a boiling point where maybe we may be facing another Great Depression. We may be facing hardship that's going to force for example, our central banks, our Federal Reserve, to change, and our government in general, to change up how we or what we hold value in. So the fiat currency it's unsustainable, because at any point in time the Fed could just print out and inject more money into the economy. There's nobody to tell them no. There's no rule that will prevent them. There's no limit to how much money they could print out. They could just theoretically print out as much as they want till the end of time, the way the system's built right now. And that's very unsustainable. That could potentially mean that if this keeps up, then we could be seeing our dollar not much different than how Venezuela is, or how Zimbabwe was in the 90s, I believe, where you have $1,000 bill and that could barely get you a loaf of bread. And that's what we're trying to avoid. But with the current fiat system, that's something that's could be more reality, unless we figure out a new way.
Right. Yeah, and like you said, and I'm understanding about the there's a certain balance of how much money you want to try to do relief without doing even further damage to the economy per se, with like you said, devaluing the dollar, just here, in the United States, for example. So that's a balance. And do you think that too, along with all of this isn't necessarily a certain one-time thing? Any kind of fear, doubt, and uncertainty kind of raises these kind of economic problems. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And especially any like you said, any type of uncertainty, any type of fear, that gets people really, really trying to figure out what is valuable to them. And what I feel is going to be a problem is you print out $4 trillion and it has to go to these certain sectors, but that being said, you can prop up businesses for so long before it's they just can't hold their own weight, and that's what a lot of people are starting to see, is that there's some companies, there's some type of businesses that will not make it out of this. As soon as once this pandemic is over and we start getting things rolling again, there's definitely a lot of companies and a lot of types of businesses that will not survive. But at the same time, there is going to be new type of business, a new type of industry, new type of ways of dealing with problems. And I think we're already starting to see that now that we're kind of being made to stay at home. People are looking for alternative ways to continue business, and people are making changes. Like, I think, for example, like shaking hands is going to be something that we won't do as much anymore as a culture, as a whole, or we're going to start seeing more remote type of business, more remote type of schooling. We've had it before, but I think we're going to start really seeing it more as a mainstream option, rather than going to a college. You have to go into a campus. I think from now on, I think it's really changed a lot, for sure.
Yeah, and I was actually gonna ask you about that. What are your thoughts and feelings about what type of businesses may not survive this? And then on the other hand, what do you think will explode? And along with that, do you think do you agree with the president and other people that the economy is just gonna skyrocket once this is done because of pent up demand and people wanting to get out of the house and all that stuff like that?
That would be true if we all had a bunch of money ready to spend as soon as this is over.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be the case. And for many people, they're going to be flat out broke when this is all over. They're not going to have anything. So I don't think it's going to be a skyrocket. I think it's going to be a slow process, maybe a slow little climb. But I don't believe that unless the only way that could happen is if there's whales, there's people that have a lot of money that are going to like influence the influence business and get people out there. But for the most part, I think people aren't going to be quick to jump out there. I don't know too many people that have a bunch of money saved up, and I know people that have saved a little bit and because of the uncertainty of the pandemic, but that could only last so long. And depending on how long this lockdown lasts, I think some people are going to get out of this ready to just get back to work because they need money more so than going out and spending money. So
they may be playing catch up.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's I understand where the president and people like that are coming from, but that's assuming that everybody's saved up and got a bunch of money ready to spend as soon as this is all over, which is not the case for most Americans.
Right. And then, what about the businesses that you think may not survive and may, rise to the occasion?
Well, I think we're going to start seeing more rise of businesses like Ubers, more type of businesses like remote learning, any type of more. You're going to start seeing more online based businesses where you could just log into your computer and do work that way. I think you'll start as far as essential type of work like work that you can't absolutely work without people will still be around, construction, things like that, where you absolutely need manpower. But I think for the most part, businesses and industries are going to start to reevaluate just how they could continue work without having to have as much human interaction as before. Because I think this really has scared a lot of people because, in our lifetime, we have not experienced anything like this.
Right.
We haven't seen anything on this level since influenza in 1917. And that and we're applying a lot of things we learned from there now. But as you could see what happened during influenza, it changed the world dramatically then. It really we went from horse and carriage and farmland and everything, and things really exploded right afterwards, with the advent of the airplane and all these things. So I think, in my opinion, it's going to force innovation. It's going to force people to think outside the box, force industries to think outside the box and figure out new ways of interacting with others, and if they could avoid interaction with others, they will. So I believe things like augmented reality, VR, things are going to start being more of a mainstream option. So, for example, if you want to have a meeting with clients, you can now throw on a pair of glasses on, and you could see them face to face, talk to them face to face, almost be in the same room with them without actually having to be. So things like that, I feel like, are going to start surfacing more as a mainstream option rather than more human interaction as we were. Because I honestly believe that for many people that have never experienced anything like that, which is 99% of people alive today, it will really spark a thought of how can we prevent this from happening again.
Right. And do you think also this is going to give a lot of time to businesses to reevaluate things like, gosh, why weren't we allowing some of our staff to work remotely and only having to come to the office maybe once a week? And additionally, do you think that's going to then drive demand into telecommunication type devices? Companies like say like an Avaya and companies like that may really explode as well.
Yeah, I mean that's how it's going to be, and as you can see now, like during this quarantine, businesses are allowing things that weren't allowed before. For example, now you can order margaritas and they'll deliver them right to you. Things like things like that I feel like now that we have it and now that they're allowed, like I don't see us going backwards. Yeah. And it's really gonna and it really maybe without this happening, I think it really companies wouldn't have tried new things. For example, WWE, they had a really good reception with the cinematic matches that I feel would have never happened if they weren't kind of put in that corner to do that. So I try to look at the positive of things and see how you could turn lemons into lemonade, and they did a good job with that, and and that's how I feel like it put people in positions where they had to try new things and change things up, and those who can float from it will float, and those who couldn't adapt will sink. And there's a lot of businesses that, like, I don't think the bar industry, restaurant industries are going away anytime soon, but I think they're gonna start to look at like other options. Like now, hey, we can deliver drinks to you, or now we don't have to be as a crowd-based kind of environment. We can find other ways where we're not having so many people in one spot. But another thought I had is as soon as this is over, many people are also going to be like, oh, thank God it's over, we don't have to quarantine anymore. So you'll start seeing a lot more concerts, get-togethers. I'm sure like wrestling is really going to explode in that sense. So I think business that involves crowds will explode because people want that. People want to go to concerts. People want, like they miss all that stuff. And I don't think we will ever find a replacement for that. So with that, yeah, I think like any type of business that involves having an audience will explode as soon as this is over.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, so let's we can transition from there to let's talk the conspiracy part of this. So there's a lot of conspiracies out there. Why this is exactly happening, and the first one out there is the introduction of 5G cellular networks. What is your thoughts about that being the reason this is happening?
Well,
or may not be happening. If you want to argue both sides.
The concern about 5G is that it generates tremendous amount of radiation that could damage the body, lead to cancer, things like that. So that's like the biggest concern about it, that with every amplification of radio waves, it can't be good for the body. We've already proven that that even 4G, 3G affected our bodies to a certain degree. Any type of cellular radiation affects the body. Wi-Fi gives off radiation. Companies work like they know the spectrum, like how intense a radio wave can be before it actually affects the human body. So they try to keep it within below that rate, that threshold. With 5G though, it's because it's such a powerful connection, they can't keep it under that threshold of the safety limit, I guess. And that's the biggest concern that people have is when people start seeing these 5G towers being put up and the people putting them up are in heavy radiation suits, you start to wonder like how safe is this actually? And so I don't have a very my view on it is not very sinister. Like I don't think it comes from a sinister origin, like, oh, we're gonna put 5G to give people cancer, things like that. No, I just think that when we have a new type of technology like this, we don't really necessarily think too much about the effects of it, and so we put the stuff out there and then we worry about what it does afterwards, and because in order to test 5G or any of these connections, you have to put them up there. You got to set up the infrastructure and you got to turn it on. So we don't actually know 100% other than what we're basing off of what Wi-Fi and 4G did. And since 4G, when it first was put out, it gave off some radiation that gave some people cancer that were putting up the radio towers. One only assumed that 5G was going to be that much worse, 10 times worse, since the connection's 10 times more powerful.
Right. Yeah. And if I was looking and reading things correctly, 5G, they say they can turn it up to, was it 60 megahertz on that type of frequency, and that was kind of the concern. Am my numbers right? Or
60 megahertz, which is like past the I believe that, I forget how much, what like we're supposed to stay under, but 60 for sure is really, really high for being around a type of like radio, or being around radio frequencies that much. 60 hertz for sure is damaging to the body. It can lead to cancer.
Yeah, and honestly, in where I live, they actually put up a new cell phone tower. And I went over to it with all this going on, looked at it. Sure enough, it's got an AT&T sticker on it. Got a sign off by the county saying it's okay to get this thing hooked up, and that was back in November of 2019, which some of this was starting to happen with this pandemic. But on the logical side of me was like, my cell phone signals once I stepped out of my house was so poor that my Wi-Fi was so much better on my phone that I just used Wi-Fi calling when I was at home. So I was just like, oh, okay, it's probably just because they see that this is, a bad area. And I think mainly it's because I live close to a fire station as well. So there could be some crossover interference with their communication system. So it was just kind of thinking, both sides of the story for myself. I was like, oh God, is this really happening? But, I've been fine beyond, right now to the typical seasonal allergies that I have with ragweed and stuff. So, but, yeah.
Yeah. And like, that's the thing about like, any type of like wireless communication or wireless connection is we do have to consider the radiation it puts off. Yeah. Now, granted, it's not at levels that people are like should be too worried about it, but with 5G, it's putting out a tremendous amount of power that it is I understand how it is concerning. I understand why certain governments, countries are petitioning to not have them put up. Because we have to like understand the technology first. Like we're just kind of stacking what we know from the past. Like we're taking 4G and we're amplifying its power, and so that's with 5G. My opinion is that it's a good thing that it became a concern and it's became a worry for so many people, because it's going to have to figure out a new way. Like if we're gonna want faster wireless speeds, we're gonna have to figure out a new way that's not just like pumping tremendous amount of electromagnetic energy into the atmosphere or into our lives. Because I mean, putting up a phone to your face even to talk still does something. It's just not something that you'll notice, I guess, in your life. Too much. You won't experience like brain damage from it, but it's still putting radio waves through your brain.
Right.
So,
yeah. And the selling point for 5G, just like with 3G, 4G, is just faster connectivity, like to our devices. And they're sometimes they're selling it to like, instant connection. You do something and it's basically done as soon as you get done pushing that button on your cell phone and things like that. Is that what you're hearing too? Selling this?
Yeah, absolutely. I hear the same thing. That they're trying to limit and minimize how much exposure you have to it.
Right. Yeah. So so kind of your final thought of could this be the reason why we're having this pandemic? I mean, we've also got the disproof of this pandemic is happening in places also that there aren't any 5G antennas put up.
Yeah, so I don't think that the pandemic or COVID-19 has any direct correlation with 5G whatsoever. Especially, I mean, 5G's already they started putting towers up last year. And I don't believe that while I do believe that radio frequencies can be used as a weapon because the military has made those, like for example anti-raid or anti gathering microwaves. They shoot them in a crowd and it causes the crowd to disperse. Things like that I do believe are a thing. I don't believe that they put up 5G and then all of a sudden people start getting sick. All of a sudden people start getting COVID-19. I don't think that there's any correlation with that. I think that maybe putting out tremendous amount of radio frequencies out in the air may affect our body. Sure, it may even lower our ability to defend against things being flooded with that kind of stuff. But with that, I don't believe that there's any correlation at all with COVID and 5G.
Right. And then there's the fabled story of the reason why we have microwaves in our lives now is because there was a satellite technician went on to service a dish antenna at one time, and he had a candy bar in his pocket, and it got melted. And they figured out, oh, that's because there's microwaves happening. And so they, went on a tangent and, saw that we could reheat food with microwaves, and hence microwave ovens are invented. So kind of interesting how things happen,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like a lot of our discoveries came from discovering it, came from accidental discovery, so, and that's kind of goes with what today, like we're throwing a lot of things out, and seeing what sticks. And there's a lot of new technologies that we've figured out that we understand how to make. For example, we understand how to turn on the car and drive it, but we don't understand how it drives, what goes under the hood. And so there's a lot of technologies like that where we figure it out. We come close to figuring out how this technology works, but we still don't understand all the side effects or all the things that this technology can do. And so with 5G, that's another thing. Like we understand radio waves, we understand microwaves, but we still haven't really fully tested what those things can do to the body other than, accidental exposure and things like that.
Yeah. All right. Well then, so on the second part of the conspiracy theory about what happened here is that this was a biological weapon, or the virus was being studied at a research lab in China, that it somehow escaped the research lab and made it out into the public. What is your thoughts about that?
Well, I wouldn't be shocked or surprised that could be a possibility. I'm not 100% believing that that's the case. I'd like to kind of dig further, but because, for example, China is giving us disinformation as far as their numbers and who's infected and things like that, it's hard to really tell what's going on and what information to trust. But I wouldn't be surprised, because if you've heard that even here in the United States, we have a facility that we had in Plum Island that I think now transferred over to Manhattan, Kansas, and it was the Center for Disease Control things. I forget the full name of it, but they were responsible in the 1980s, or not responsible, but it was theory that Lyme's disease came from them, because at the time they were in Plum Island, people started getting Lyme's disease. It was only happening around that area. And then it spread from there. And then, as well as people were finding things washing up on shore from that island that looked like, experiments of sort, like people were like experimenting on people. And so I don't doubt that every government has their own facility like that, their own study where they're studying things and they create diseases because the United States' motto is we can't cure something unless we figure it out, unless we find it first. So their idea is you have to create the virus and create the disease first to be able to conquer it. So when people say things like that, it makes me believe that, hey, creating a virus as a bioweapon is a possibility, because people have thought of it. People have said, hey, what if we do this and we spread it. And but I don't think that at this time, I don't believe that COVID-19 was a bioweapon, because that could easily have been said about SARS, which is COVID-2 or something like that. That could have been easily said about the swine flu, the bird flu, and any past disease that we had in the last 15 years.
Right. Yeah. And they did you talk about that. They did a pretty good containment of SARS, because that never came to full pandemic. It pretty much stayed where it was. But additionally, a lot of things people may or may not realize that a good majority of people in China smoke, and that could be part of the reason why it does hit them fairly difficult, hit them very hard. So it's very interesting to, when they think about that, and people have to look at these numbers, and like you said, the numbers in China, we never know if they're they're correct. And there's the conspiracy that, the WHO is China friendly, and that's why Trump is kind of really digging at them about the funding and stuff like that. Because the United States does give them a lot of funding, and he's threatening them to do what he wants to do on them.
And here's my thought: let's say that COVID was created as a bioweapon, and we find out that China did it. What is going to be the repercussions of that? That is going to severely affect the entire planet. To be able to not only charge or accuse somebody of that, but then charge them of it on a global, in the global stage, I think there would be some major ramifications for something like that. Not only will it would definitely distrust China permanently and make them the black sheep, but then people will start to wonder what other countries are doing this. They can't be only China. It can't be only one country experimenting with this kind of stuff. Because every country has spies, every country has interaction, and so what one country knows, the other country knows as well. Intelligence agency knows. They make it known that everybody watches everybody, and so if that's going to punch a major hole in every government around the world, if we come to find out that there is a nefarious a government out there, a nefarious scheme to try to spread a virus and kill off people.
Yeah.
So I don't like to think on that level, because many people don't understand the ramifications of if that were to be a thing. That would potentially lead to a world war that we wouldn't ever that we may never recover from.
Right. Yeah. There's, we know that there's, for example, biological warfare in some of those, type of countries that, don't necessarily worry about that too much, because they're, turning it on their enemies per se. So that's, so I totally hear what you say there. So what about the third major conspiracy, that this came from a what's called a wet market, and possibly from a bat that got part of it too is that they think that the bat may be hit because bats sometimes have these type of coronaviruses, and of course bats are mammals just like us, but then there was a transfer animal such as a if I get this correct, pangolin, that is an exotic animal. It's the only animal that mammal that has scales. And these wet markets, do have exotic animals, and these wet markets are not very good when it comes to hygiene. They got animals stacked upon animals and that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts about that? This possibly came from a wet market that China is kind of known for too.
I mean, while it could be a possibility, that's the reason that's the theory on why here in America, the medical professionals were not quick to view it as a concern when they first heard wind of it back in January. or even December, I believe. They weren't so concerned because China was telling them that the spread came from animal to human, and because of that, it was a very ineffective transfer. And so that's why the medical professionals here were not too concerned, because they felt, okay, it's going to be something similar like swine or bird flu, where while people can still get infected, it could be contained because the spread won't be that easy, because when it comes to animal to human transfer, it's not that easy, and it's something that could be fairly contained. So that's why I believe peer professionals were in January telling us it's not something to be alarmed about, and then a month later they kind of went back on their word, because they found out that that this is not a similar case like swine flu or bird flu. This is something that could easily be transferred through the air, because it attacks the lungs, and it could just easily be breathed in and transfer among humans. And but that was that disinformation that could have prevented more deaths. It could have prevented more hospitalizations had we taken it seriously from then instead of a month ago. But with the bat thing, back in November and December, there was a big online craze called #EatBats that was coming out of China. And I think they were doing it on TikTok or Instagram or somewhere like that. But there was a hashtag craze that was going around called Eat Bats, and so for a few months, people were eating bats and posting in the hashtag online. And so that that's why a lot of people believe that it came from eating bats, because there was a big fad, a big craze going on around November, December concerning that in China.
Yeah, and this tradition of eating exotic animals, from my understanding, it's typically a more older generation in China that's doing it. The newer generation, the younger people, are not necessarily doing that. So this tradition may start coming to an end, or I hate to use the phrase dying out. Is that kind of what you're hearing too?
That is correct. The younger Chinese population isn't as into all these, like eating exotic animals or eating all these exotic foods as people once were, because long ago, previous generations, it was a common thing to do. You have to understand that when China was going through their rule, or with their dictatorship in the 1950s and 60s, there was a big famine. And people would just eat whatever they can find, whatever they can get their hands on, because the government controlled your rice paddy, controlled everything. So in Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, same with Philippines, even China, people ate what they could, and it became a kind of almost like a dish, a staple of the country when it was all said and done. It's kind of like how soul food,
Yeah.
We comes from like the leftovers of things people didn't want to eat, but they turned it into a food that could be ate. So but since that was like a product of its time, that's why I feel it's that those traditions are dying out. Nobody's interested in eating these things unless it's for like a not to eat just to eat it. But the only time I see people eat exotic foods is when they're trying to like do something different for the sake that it's an exotic food, not for the sake of eating it.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So basically, since the food industry is now being more industrialized and streamlined, and big farms and company owned farms and things like that, we're able to feed the world per se.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that, with like the whole blockchain technology, which I'm watching it being applied in China, is now they're able to track where food and products come from all the way to its source. So what you're getting if you're ordering it from that place. You'll know that it's not like bootlegged, because that's the big, and bootleg knockoff products, that's what China's known for. You could take any product you don't understand, you could send it out to China and they'll reverse engineer it for you. Yeah, they did that a lot in the cannabis industry when I was involved in it.
Oh, I see.
With the vape pens and things like that. Um, so yeah, like China is huge on like, you can bootleg anything, you can make anything. There's no like copyright laws. There's no laws that prevent you
Yeah.
from making anything, like taking somebody else's idea. But with that being said, I think once blockchain is really fully implemented, it's going to allow companies to know like, hey, this product came from me. Here's the serial number on it. Like it could be tracked all the way through its delivery process, and you know what you're getting. It's you know that somewhere along the line you won't get your product switched out, which is another thing I heard a lot about, especially when I was in Vietnam, is that people, sometimes the government or whoever, will go through your stuff, and if they see something that they like, they'll either take it or they'll replace it with something that looks like it but it's a knockoff. So if you have like an iPhone, they'll swap yours out with a fake iPhone or something like that.
Yeah, they'll intercept it basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then so those kind of problems, I feel, are going to start to become a thing of the past once they really fully implement blockchain, because then you won't be able to lie about or manipulate where this stuff is coming from.
Oh, that's yeah, very, very interesting. So let's maybe kind of start wrapping this up, maybe on some quote unquote, a little bit more positive thoughts about this pandemic. They're starting to think that possibly that after this breakout started happening and things started getting locked down and tightened, that actually the infection started spreading from China to Europe and then to the United States and other parts of the country. Do you kind of believe that could possibly be what happened and why we were kind of slow to react to that?
Yeah, I think that was a possibility. And the thing is that I always keep in mind is that see how the Spanish influenza spread in the early 1900s, before we even really had the mass transit that we have today, the mass travel that we have today. Yeah. People didn't really travel much then, and it spread from America to Europe and
then back.
And then back, yeah. And so with that being said, it only made sense that, hey, maybe it would have taken some time to reach here, but it was eventually going to reach here with the amount of travel and the amount of interaction that humans have nowadays. And the other worry that I'm keeping in mind of is, just like influenza, it came in the spring, like kind of COVID is here now. It did its damage then it seemed to have gone away during the summer, but then it came back 10 times worse in winter. During flu season. So that's kind of the race right now that medical professionals are trying to do. If we can find a vaccine before the next flu season, then we should have this under control. But if we don't, then it's pretty worrisome, because we're such a small world now compared to then, that it's going to be impossible to function as a planet these days without having to interact with each other. So I'm hoping that we get this taken care of, and we are. From the looks of it, people are working day in, day out, 24 hours a day, maybe an hour or two of sleep, which I worry for that even.
Yeah.
So you need to get some rest.
Didn't Einstein claim that he only slept like an hour a day?
Yes, true. That's why. Yeah, and I hear it from a lot of I would hear it from this guru who said that in reality, if you have a healthy, strong body, you don't need more than 4 hours of sleep.
Right.
So I like to believe that.
Yeah, or some medical professionals probably maybe 4.5, because that's they say that your REM cycle resets around 90 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So 4.5 hours probably. That's why people always say 8 hours of sleep. I said no, probably about 7.5 or 9, depending on when you can get to bed. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes if I only get say 5 hours of sleep or so, I'm like, something, it just feels off. But if I get 6 or 7.5, then I feel so much better.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I've experienced that too. And I used to wonder, why does this extra 30-minute or extra hour matter so much? But it's true. When you look at it down, when you break it down scientifically and know that, REM takes 90 minutes for it to reset. It makes total sense.
Right.
So I'm hopeful. People are working 24 hours a day to try to figure this out. and we're coming close. I think they said that we're really coming close to an antibody test. So that gives me good sign that soon a vaccine's around the corner. And we got a few months to kind of really figure this out, because we're all doing our part as people. We're very surprised with how well we are cooperating as far as the stay-at-home rules. So we're all doing our part here, and now we're just gonna have to wait for them to do theirs. Which I'm very hopeful for. Like, this isn't just us here in America working on this, it's all around the world, because this affected the entire planet. So I know that the entire planet is communicating with each other as far as progression, figuring this out.
Yeah. And then what about too, that, and I don't know if I've even heard, this was on a podcast I listened to, and I asked one of my doctor friends, she's actually a doctor, chiropractic, but she's very knowledgeable and researches a lot of stuff when it comes to vaccines and things of that nature. But there's been talk about that possibly that this virus is, the more deadly it is, it's actually less transmissible, and the more transmissible is the less deadly version of the virus. They think there's maybe one or two or possibly multiple versions of this strain per se. Have you heard any of this particular theory?
I have heard about that, and it makes total sense, because normally there's not just one strain of things.
Right.
It's different types of strains, and it does make sense that like the more deadly something becomes is usually the more specific it becomes to the way it attacks your body. And so that being said, it's less, it makes it allows, so there's like, because it's more specific of how it attacks the body, it's harder for it to spread in that sense. But when you have one that's, it's more like a common one, like a common flu. Anyone can get it. It's not quite as deadly because your body has, it's not as specific in the way that it goes into your body, and so your body is able to come up with a way to attack it. And it's just another variant of a flu. It's just more evolved strain of a flu. So we're not too far off from like understanding how it works. But we, like your friend was right. There's multiple strains, and but we can't really identify them until we really recognize how they're entering the body and how they're affecting the body. Because right now there's been cases too that I've been hearing where people think it's they had a hard time identifying whether it's for sure COVID-19 or just a regular flu, and that's because I felt there was multiple strains of it, and we were only really looking at COVID-19 and not really looking at these other possibility strains that are also out there.
Right. Yeah. All right. So to kind of maybe wrap and summarize this all up, your thoughts about what the best things for maybe everybody to do, just implement everything we're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, we came up with quarantining and social distancing back during the influenza, and it worked. It's still working today. As you can see, the total deaths that they predicted are not nearly as high as how we thought they would be. Mm-hmm. So these old methods like washing your hands, staying hygienic, keeping distance, they still work, because that's how this virus spreads. It spreads from getting close to somebody. You cough, it goes in the air, you can breathe it in. And so the more we practice staying distant and practice good hygiene methods like that, then we're doing our part. There's really nothing else I could think of that would replace that. Even I would tell people, like, wearing a mask does not substitute for just coughing into it and using it as the catch of your of your spit. Yeah. You should still like replace it every time like you can. Try not to cough into it. If you are sick, especially, try not to go out. Mm-hmm. I'm not a medical professional, but these are just common sense things that, we just got to do our part, stay distant, and until we go over that curve that the medical professionals say we've gone over it. We're now starting to see a decrease, and then we could start going forward from there.
Right. Yeah, and speaking of awesome, speaking of going forward, we would be amiss if we didn't talk a little bit wrestling. So before I do let you go, people wanted to, once we get back into the wrestling thing, tell the people where they could catch you, what promotions that they could see you, maybe currently and maybe in the future.
Well, once this all blows over and we start hitting the ring again, you can definitely find me back at Rocky Mountain Pro. I'm looking to expand my horizons and hopefully reach out to maybe Devotion Pro Wrestling in Utah. I've got to wrestle for them once, a couple times in the past. I'm hoping to go back. I'm also looking to reach out to other promotions here locally in Colorado. So once this is all over, I'm definitely going to reach out to, down to Colorado Springs area. I'm going to reach out to other promotions within the city of Denver and try to expand my my resume here in the state.
Yeah. All right. Well, then also in the meantime, maybe they want to pick your brain like I did here on the social medias. Where could they do that?
Well, if they ever wanted to find me, they could always contact me via Facebook. On Facebook, it's Jumbo. It's facebook.com/RMP Jumbo. They could message me there. I respond to any message. They could also find me on Twitter at Jumbo_RMP, and as well as on Instagram, which is Jumbo_RMP as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, once again, I appreciate you coming on to this edition of RMP Radio, and I'll definitely be seeing you in the future once we're done with all this.
Sounds great, Artie. We'll see you next time.
Once again, a big thank you to Zamore, a.k.a. Jumbo Zamore. I just have a little time still trying to get used to the name change. Just means that we need to get more wrestling back out there once all this current state of affairs and situation is all over. All right, so like we do here on RMP Radio, before we get out of here, let's pay some bills like they used to say back in the day, which is very important. If you want to get some merchandise from your favorite Rocky Mountain Pro superstars, do a couple things. We have a merch store over at rmpwrestling.com. Click on the merchandise link, or if you're in your Amazon search bar or in the Amazon app, search for Rocky Mountain Pro. Additionally, reach out to your favorite Rocky Mountain Pro superstars. In this time, a lot of them have been setting up some pro wrestling tees website, as Rocky Mountain Pro also has one too. So if you want to get your Rocky Mountain Pro shirt, I believe also there is a vintage classic Left Coast Gorillas shirt up there probably, as well as a Mercury Yaden classic shirt. So those are available as well. All right, so you want to watch us since we don't have any current events happening. They are doing the Rocky Mountain Pro Rewind on twitch.tv/Rocky Mountain Pro. You can see all the episodes that have been polished and uploaded so far on Fight TV, Impact Plus TV, as well as Fight Network UK, and youtube.com/Rocky Mountain Pro, and also on now on Right Now TV streaming. So go to Right Now TV's website or their Facebook and check to see if you have a local channel in your area, or you can stream, I believe, on their Facebook page as well as their Roku app. Want to follow us? In the meantime, everything does stem from the website at rmpwrestling.com. And on the social media, the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, all of the name of The Rocky MTN Pro. And let me phonetically spell that once again for you. That is The Rocky Mike Tango November Pro. And I want to thank you all for listening to this edition of RMP Radio, where pro wrestling is elevated. Peace.